Hey friends, I'm Emma. There are those moments in reality television when the curtain pulls back just enough for us to glimpse what's truly happening behind the polished family portraits and the rehearsed smiles. And for anyone who's stuck with Sister Wives for more than just a season, the moment Garrison Brown passed away was exactly one of those times. A moment where the shiny surface cracked open and the raw, uncomfortable truth underneath was exposed. It was heartbreaking. A young life lost way too early. But what was even more disturbing was seeing who didn't seem to react emotionally. Robin Brown, who's cried on cue season after season, sobbing over frayed relationships, playing the misunderstood outcast, could hardly muster a response. And that silence? It was silence. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe and ring that bell so you never get to miss the breakdown of the stories they'd prefer you wouldn't see. And I would love to know your opinion about this one, because this episode, this response, this family breakdown, it's almost not possible to view without feeling something. Garrison was Janelle's son, a National Guardsman, honest and brave, and one of the few in the Brown family who had the guts to dissent from the narrative. He recognized the reality. The way Robin and Cody slowly took center stage, and everyone else, the wives and children, quietly moved to the periphery. And as a result, he was alone. Silenced. Robin, who earlier cried over Mary's divorce, who cried about the COVID rule controversy debates, who always acted as if she was shattered by family conflicts, had little to nothing to say when Garrison died. No tearful heartbreak, no authentic sorrow, just a clumsy effort at wringing out a tear, and lots of discussion about how hard it was on Cody. This isn't merely about a couple of missing tears. It's about what those missing tears are actually communicating. Over the next few minutes, we're going to take you through the responses we saw on screen. What was said, what wasn't said, and what it says about the long-repressed dynamics between Cody, Robin, and the rest of the family. And I assure you, once you see it, there's no unseeing it. If you've watched Sister Wives for any length of time, you already know. Robin Brown has never really been frugal with the tears. From the beginning, she's been the poster child of high-drama emotion, sobbing in confessionals, sobbing in family gatherings, sobbing when the wind so much as shifts direction. I mean, this is the same. The woman who tearfully talked once of the spiritual grace of being a sister wife. She cried when Mary legally divorced Cody so that Robin might wed him. She wept when Christine began pulling away. She cried when her stepkids did not so readily open the gates of their inner lives. Season after season, nearly by rote, there was some new tear-filled address, some quivering voice, some set piece designed to exhibit us with her suffering. And honestly, for quite a while, many people ate it up. She acted soft-spoken, always doing her best, caught between allegiances. But as the seasons went by and the family cracks spread wide, those tears began to taste. Staged. Cerebral. Like the sobbing wasn't so much about true connection and more about holding on to power. It was always positioned in terms of how difficult everything was for her. Few times did Robin cry for the children, unless it somehow came full circle to her own pain. Again and again, she placed herself as the victim, even when it was Cody's kids speaking out their pain and rejection. Somehow, Robin always found herself the one in need of consolation. And that's precisely why her silence today is so loud. When Garrison died, the same woman who bawled about COVID protocols, who bemoaned being misunderstood, scarcely had any glimmer of sorrow. Her voice was flat, her words were empty. And her focus wasn't on Garrison. It was on Cody, on how Cody was suffering, how Cody was breaking down, how she had to be there to support him. Not once did she share a memory of Garrison. Not once did she speak from a place of personal heartbreak, or even attempt the kind of emotional display we've seen her give over far, far less. It was shocking, because this wasn't merely some family fight, nor a stressful holiday meal. This was the death of a boy, her husband's boy, a boy who had once called her stepmom. And when it mattered most, there were no tears. It's not just what she didn't say, it's knowing exactly what she can say when she wants to. That rich history of on-stage meltdowns established a precedent. And when actual tragedy struck you, real, devastating tragedy, Robin didn't even come close to accessing it. That's the paradox that's shocked so many viewers. The lady who sobbed over everything didn't sob for this. Garrison Brown wasn't some peripheral figure in the sister wives drama. He was one of the few who were brave enough to speak up and be truthful when it wasn't easy, especially when that truth aimed straight at Cody and Robin. Garrison was stubborn, intensely devoted to his mother Janelle, and extremely independent. And as the family started to fracture, he didn't simply sit silently on the sidelines. He spoke out. He asked hard questions. He refused to play along and act like everything was okay when it was obviously not. One of the most memorable moments was during the peak of the COVID tension. Garrison and his brother Gabriel were totally isolated from Cody because they wouldn't conform to Robin's strict household rules. They were grown men, living independently, being careful. But that wasn't good enough for Robin. She insisted on strict, almost impossible rules that basically kept Cody isolated with her and her kids. Garrison called it out. He questioned it. In so many words. He resisted the notion that the whole family dynamic had to revolve around Robin's tastes. And for having the temerity to speak out, he was disciplined. You could see it in plain sight on Cody's face during those incidents. Garrison wasn't just disagreeing with him, he was questioning Cody's authority, exposing that the rules were less about safety and more about control. And when Garrison spoke out about how unfair it was that Robin and her children got all of Cody's time and attention, while the other children were excluded and overlooked, the tension finally boiled over. Robin didn't handle it well. She characterized Garrison's honesty as aggression. She complained his words hurt her. She characterized herself as traumatized by the way some of the kids, particularly Garrison, blamed her for the breakdown of the family. But here's the truth. Garrison wasn't blaming her. He was being honest. And that honesty challenged the groomed image Robin and Cody had worked so hard to uphold. So when Garrison passed away, fans anticipated at least some recognition of who he actually was. A boy with a voice, a son who fought for justice, someone who, in spite of the war, was still part of the family. But Robin didn't say anything about him. She didn't respect what he was to the Browns, or even grant a moment of personal loss or sorrow. Instead, once again, she spoke of Cody, on how he was affected. That silence? It struck differently. Because if you've spent years calling someone difficult, portraying them as the issue, how do you then publicly grieve them without first confessing that you may have been in error? Robin hadn't merely lost a stepson. She'd lost the one being who'd pierced the whole facade. And perhaps that's why she had nothing to say. The day the news broke regarding Garrison's passing was one of those instances that shall always make an impression on the family and on the audience that had watched them come along for more than 10 years. It wasn't merely the loss of a son. It was a heartfelt reckoning, a moment that made everyone finally confront what had been building under the surface all those years. And the way everyone reacted told more than any words ever could have. Christine, who had already broken away from the family by then, was devastated. Her voice broke, face imploded with sorrow. In her confessionals, she talked with unfiltered, raw heartache. This wasn't Janelle's son. He was family. She wept as she explained how she collapsed onto the floor immediately after hearing the news. Her sorrow was instant, unmistakable, and achingly real. Janelle, Garrison's mom, was in complete shock. Her anguish shone through in every single shot. She reported driving like a mad person attempting to find him, even though it already was too late. You could hear it in her voice. She was reliving all the memories, all the moments, wondering if there had been something missing. Something she could have done differently. Her grief was not performative. It wasn't rehearsed. It was the excruciating pain of a mother losing her child. Even Mary, who had long since been distanced from the family, crumbled into tears. She could hardly get the words out through tears when she talked about Garrison. And in spite of it all, the divorces, the betrayals, she left everything to stand by Janelle. She brought over food. She stayed overnight with her. Because for Mary, this wasn't about old scars. It was about love. Now Robin's response was a stark contrast to the other women. It was cold, distant, almost clinical. Where everybody else talked about Garrison, Robin talked about Cody. She said that she was trying to get through it herself and assist Cody in processing the shock. But there was no personal feeling, no mutual memories of Garrison, no visible sadness you could sense through the screen. Robin wasn't fighting to speak past her tears. She was simply speaking. Even when Cody had a breakdown, Robin remained in that same caregiver mode. She was composed, too composed, almost as if her position in that moment wasn't grieving stepmother, but emotional support for her husband. While the other parents were grieving the loss of Garrison, Robin was otherwise occupied consoling Cody. The boy himself was hardly spoken of. And that's when it became crystal clear. This wasn't just about mourning played out there on the television screen first. It was exposure, unadulterated, a family's reality pouring out on camera, and Robin's mom on Garrison's name telling the loudest tale of anything she ever wept about. Sister Wives became, at some point, less of a show about a family, and began becoming a show about saving face. And after Garrison's passing, that was horrifyingly clear. What was supposed to be a moment of raw, private grief gradually moved into something else, something that seemed staged, edited, curated. When Cody and Robin eventually opened up on camera, it didn't appear to be grief. It seemed to be PR. Robin, during her sit-downs, moved immediately into damage control mode. The attention wasn't on Garrison's life, or what he had meant to her personally. It was all about the emotional impact on Cody, and by default, on her. She spoke of having to stand by Cody, about how difficult it was for him to sort things out. But where was the heartbreak for Garrison himself? Where were the memories, the regret, the bond? And then there was Cody. Cody, who hadn't shared a genuine relationship with Garrison in more than a year. Before the cameras, he appeared much more interested in delivering an impression of sadness that would fit into the narrative the show wished to convey. There's one line that still rings in the ears of many viewers. He said, as if matter-of-factly, "I just want to bury him." No reflection, no tender thoughts, no respect for the life of his son. Just a clinical urge to close the book and go on. And the longer you watch that sequence, the less things seem to make sense. Garrison died in early March. But when the cameras eventually rolled, the grass was green, the snow had melted away, the skies were clear and bright. Flagstaff does not look like that in March. Not even close. It was clear this was filmed much later, time too when the landscape looked right for TV. And that says it all. Because when you're grieving real, you don't wait for spring. You don't wait for ideal light. But if you're filming grief, you wait, you plan, you stage. This wasn't about grieving Garrison. It was about working the optics. Even in Cody's confessionals, you could sense it. He struggled to sound different. Sorry. He said he had to change. He said he thought there would be more time. But where was that change before? Why did it take a tragedy to say these things aloud? And even now, why were the other kids still being left out in the cold? The thing is, Cody and Robin didn't just lose a family member. They lost control over the story. And once that slipped away, they did what they always do. They attempted to mold the moment into something cleaner, something safer, something that could perhaps be forgiven by the audience. But loss doesn't operate on such principles. And spectators, they cut right through the act. What happened following Garrison's passing didn't simply reopen wounds. It smashed them wide open. It fractured the family asunder in a way that cannot be reversed. No matter how many additional seasons they produce, no matter how frequently they declare, "We're working on it," the harm is done, seen, irreversible. At Garrison's funeral, Cody and Robin were not at the forefront. It was Garrison's siblings, the ones who had actually been there for him, who had laughed with him, wept with him, and borne his memories. They were the ones who stood holding his urn. They were the ones the cameras filmed consoling each other. They were the ones who knew precisely what had been lost. Cody was not presented the folded flag by the National Guard. That was bestowed upon someone else. Someone who had indeed been there. Someone who hadn't left him. And it wasn't symbolic. It was a big, in-your-face announcement. Cody had lost that job a long time ago, before Garrison was dead. There were whispers, gossip that Cody and Robin hadn't even been invited to the National Guard memorial. That they just appeared. Some claimed they caused a scene. That they tried to put themselves at the center. Even requested the memorial be filmed. And whether those facts ever fully get established, the reality was already apparent. Cody and Robin were standing apart. Not physically, but emotionally, spiritually. They were no longer woven into the family's fabric. The other mothers, Christine, Janelle, even Mary, closed ranks around the children. Janelle's children leaned on one another with a quiet strength that was all it needed to say. You could look it in their faces, the protectiveness, the heartbreak, the unspoken understanding. They weren't waiting for Cody to step forward. They knew he wouldn't. Robin stood beside Cody, but not with the family. Not actually, because by that point, the family had gotten on without them. What was once a dream of togetherness, a shared house full of shared expectations, was now merely broken bits. A group of individuals who at last, had seen the truth. And the audience witnessed it too. This wasn't a family mourning. It was a family awakening. The togetherness that once characterized sister wives was lost, replaced with space, silence, and a final, shattering realization. Some ties can't weather betrayal. And the saddest thing? Garrison's death didn't just take away a bright, truthful heart. It revealed who was really there for him, and who, inwardly, never was. Garrison's loss didn't break hearts. It broke the facade. All those carefully rehearsed sound bites, all the speeches to save the show, all those tears spent sobbing over things that now all seem so minuscule. They disintegrated in the face of authentic, intolerable loss. Because sorrow, authentic sorrow, has a tendency to lay bare character, and when a reaction rings false, the silence is louder than any tears could ever be. Robin Brown, who used to be so overcome with emotion over every little family disagreement, remained silent in the one time when raw, real emotion was most needed. And Cody, the father who had spent years insisting on loyalty above all else, was finally confronted with a truth he couldn't dictate. His son died feeling rejected. And now, the rest of the family is moving on without him. So I'd like to ask you, what do you see when someone's grief feels more like a performance than actual pain? Did this heartbreaking moment finally reveal to you who's been authentic all along? Let me know your thoughts below. I read every single word. This is Emma and you're watching. If this video touched your heart, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and pass it along to someone who must be told the truth. Thanks for standing in with me today, and I'll meet you in the next one.